segregation like for you?
It was awful. I can recall many instances that that happened to me. One thing, for example, when I went to McKinley High School, there were several blacks on the football team. They had asked that or said that they would like to have a black girl be represented on the homecoming queen event, and so they called me in the counseling office and said how nice it was, and they had wanted me, but this year there was only going to have 7 candidates instead of 8, and so of course I was going to be number 8, so I got ousted of that. And that, it's things like that that I didn't think about at the time, but I thought about later, and I thought, my God, what is wrong with me? It kind of messes with your self-esteem if you allow it to. But that was one incident. And there's several, and one as I grew up and went to business college, and I was excited about graduating and trying to find a job, and I went to and I won't mention the name of the business, and went there to find a job, and they said, well, we don't hire niggers or Indians here. Yeah, just a very blatant racism, and it just, I don't think people have any idea how those kind of things affect young people, and especially young people. And I was a person who was very excited about trying to find a job, but those are a couple of things I can recall.
Have you been involved in any other civil rights movements?
Yeah, I have. At the time, I right now can't remember everything, but as like I said, as Mrs. Gibson was my mentor, there were many things that I became involved in that I probably would not have if it hadn't been for her. And one of them was, and I'm sure you've heard the name Cecil Reed. And okay, Mr. Reed and Mrs. Gibson were those people who kind of pushed me into doing things, and especially in the civil rights movement at the time. There were no black teachers in Cedar Rapids when I was growing up. And so Mrs. Gibson and Mr. Reed decided that they wanted that. And so Mrs. Gibson called me every Saturday morning. Get up, it's time to get up, and we got work to do. So this Saturday she called, and we all got together and decided that we were going to try and get some black teachers. I don't remember how long it took us, but we ended up, the Cedar Rapids ended up hiring 34 black teachers, principals, and counselors. Some of them we still have in Cedar Rapids, like Dr. Ruth White. She was one of the people we recruited. So that was another thing that I became involved in.
Why did you choose to get involved?
Because, for one thing, because Mrs. Gibson did push me, and I thank her to this day for all the things that she had me become involved in. I think it made me a better person. It made me become more aware of my surroundings and what was happening in my life. And it also made me want to teach young people how to act, what to do. If you want something, you can do it, but there's a way to do it. And that's what Mr. Reed and Mrs. Gibson taught me. And as a result of that, Mr. Reed and then the governor, was Governor Harold Hughes, brought me to Des Moines and said, we want you to take a job, and it's a tough one. And at that time, it was the unemployment agency. And I took the job. They said, just take it for a year. And I did. And my job was to get the hard-to-employ hired in some of the businesses in Cedar Rapids. And as a result of that, I got 64 hired at Collins. And, I don't know, 30-some hired at other places. But what an eye-opener for me to be able to go out. I went out to the businesses, and I tried to recruit these hard-to-employ. That probably was the most interesting job that I've ever had. But what that did for me as a person I look back on it, and Mr. Reed, oh, I love Mr. Reed, Miss Gibson, and to think that they had that kind of faith in me, that they thought I could do these jobs. They would always recommend me. And I didn't think about it then, but years later I thought, isn't that something? They thought I was good enough that they recommended me for doing things. That still means a lot to me.
What were you doing before this?
When me and my brother grew up, we lived on 12th Avenue Southeast, 1603. In my parents' rear altogether, there was only two of us, 22 kids, in and out of the house, all the time. Yeah, so I was accustomed, even though there was just me and my brother, I was accustomed to having just people in that house all of the time, eating and sleeping, and my mother was just that kind of person. Our house was open.
What was your biggest accomplishment?
Oh, my biggest accomplishment. I don't know. That one kind of took me off guard. I think just being able to. Oh, somebody reminded me that I sing. But I never thought that as an accomplishment because in my family, everybody sings, and I thought everybody was a singer. I mean, it wasn't any big deal, but yeah, I've had some accomplishment in that, and that I think was nice. But the singing was not the biggest accomplishment for me. I think the biggest accomplishment now that I am the age I am and think back was the day that I decided to give my life to Christ and become baptized and try to be a Christian. That was my biggest accomplishment.
What is the most important thing in your life?
In my life now? I guess now it's working on myself and becoming a better Christian than I am. And I have a great love for family. I have a great love for family. And even the little ones. And not just family, but I can see a little kid and just fall in love with them. So I do like that.
Well, thank you for interviewing with me today.
Well, you're more than welcome. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.